Grit with Grace is brought to you by Zoetis. Your dedication runs deep, and it fuels everything Zoetis does. To protect and support cattle and those who care for them, we are born of the bond. Learn more at bornofthebond.com.
Well, when you think of Philadelphia, you often think of a town rich with history. It's the birthplace of the United States, where the founding fathers penned the Declaration of Independence. But just south of Philly, you'll find a dairy preserving history even in the face of adversity. Just south of Philadelphia,
we're located here in South Jersey. We farm around 3,000 acres here.
Is where Eric Eachus calls home.
We're a dairy farm. We have 1,400 cows, milk around 650, produce 17 million pounds of milk a year on average.
A family that's farmed in this area for nearly 80 years is one of the last ones left.
I mean, this farm was started in my grandparents in 1943.
Out of the 114 dairy farms left in New Jersey, Wellacrest Farms is now one of the largest. And a month ago, the dairy that looked like this, today looks like this.
We had a F3 tornado come through.
An area not known for dairying is one where devastation from a tornado is also rare. But on September 1st, this dairy farm was the target of Hurricane Ida's wrath.
6:30, got the alert on our phones.
Away from their phones, they didn't see the warning right away.
My wife ran up and got her phone and said, oh, there's an imminent tornado just touched down a couple miles that way.
As they took cover, they didn't know this was the scene taking place outside one of the largest tornadoes in New Jersey's history, ripping across their dairy.
First thing, we walked out and I said, oh, my trees in my front yard are knocked down. I said, man, that stinks.
But looking across the landscape, he quickly realized nearly everything on their dairy farm was gone.
As soon as we pulled up here to the main driveway, it was just, I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
Barns flattened, equipment trapped and damaged.
Couldn't drive up here. It was trees, all the wires were down, buildings were blown down, there's cows all over the place. It was just disaster.
A scene you typically find from a tornado tearing across the plains or Midwest had just happened in their backyard.
Called my dad and he came over and just walked around and was like, you're just in shock. Like, what do you do? Where do you start?
But starting somewhere is exactly what they did. Checking to make sure the power was off of the roof, they started right in.
Back that way, we have 3 different barns that had heifers and dry cows, and there was nothing left of those buildings, so we had about 600 cows just running loose. So the first thing was all the cows that are out, try to gather them up somehow just so they'd be safe, and then work on trying to get the cows out of the buildings.
The tornado hit at 6:30, and as Eric and his family were still in shock, they called a few farm employees as well as neighbors for help.
By 7 o'clock, we probably had 50, 60 people here.
As more started to show up, he says 75 people were there until 11 that night, getting the cows to safety.
One of our freestall barns is about 120 cows on either side of the barn, and the one side was leaning a little higher, so we were able to get all those out, but the other side were trapped.
Cutting metal trusses one by one, they were able to free cows on one side.
This side here is where we could get the cows out, but this side here on the right is where all the cows were pinned.
Pinned but not injured. With their machinery too damaged in the storm, they knew they couldn't get the rest of the cows out until the next day.
We called electric company, our local company, try to come get power on the milking parlor because we still have to milk what we can. And then next thing was trying to get water running because cows got to drink, and it was a long night. They sleep all that night, about nonstop.
Working through the night, the next morning, more help poured in.
Then a local construction company, Pearson, as well as Diamond Materials, they came in because they heard about it. One of the foremen came in and said, what do we need? I said, well, first thing is, we got 120 cows still trapped. We can't get to them. I mean, we have equipment, but we can't handle that. And we put makeshift gates up just so the cows could go back to theirs. They have no roof or building. It's their spot where they have a place to lay down. It's regular feed out as we feed them. They have water is there.
A temporary plan as the Eachuses wade through more rubble and decisions of what to do next.
The struggle is trying to, what are we going to rebuild? How can we rebuild?
At a time when building supplies are already tight, the plan to rebuild isn't just coming with decisions on how to rebuild, but how quickly they can construct something to protect these cows from the harshness of winter.
And then the next big problem is insurance, dealing with insurance companies, and you know, what they're gonna pay and what we can afford to do based on how all that works out. So it's been a lot of phone calls here the past couple of days. It's been quite a bit trying to decide what we want to do.
A family grateful for not only the animals they were spared, but other lives not lost.
The main thing is thankful that for how much destruction has happened that our family wasn't hurt. And not just our family, even any of our employees were here milking at the time.
Finding the silver lining is second nature for this dairy farmer who wears a smile everywhere he goes, even in the midst of the devastation.
If you look at all the stuff that's going on in the world, everything seems so divided. When a big disaster like this happens, everybody comes together, you know, and tries to help out in any way they can.
Many who knew nothing about farming rallied around this family to help the Eachuses pick up the pieces left.
We had school teachers here, we have lawyers, we had everybody days after it happened, just coming in and what can we do?
A tragedy that brought together all walks of life, as this dairy family refuses to walk away.
So to try to keep it going, so one day maybe my kids can get to do it.
Fighting to have a future in dairy instead of being overcome with the obstacles, as this dairy farmer
Crazy amount of support
is doing so with grit and with grace. A GoFundMe campaign has been set up for the family and Wellacrest Farms as they have a long road to rebuild. But when we come back, John Phipps.
Retiring can be hard.
Over 10,000 years ago, mankind first domesticated cattle. At this exact same time, cattle domesticated us. Our two species have worked together and taken care of each other for centuries. Zoetis is today's advanced answer to that ancient bond. We help make it stronger, healthier, more robust. We are born of the bond.